Okay. So we have more corruption out of Fulton County. So I wanted to highlight this. Fulton County Election Board faces $10,000 a day fine for not appointing Republicans. And this $10,000 a day is really taxpayers paying this fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being fined because Democrats voted against appointing two candidates known for election denialism and voter registration challenges. So Fulton County Commission in Georgia will be fined $10,000 a day for violating a court order to appoint two Republicans associated with Trump-aligned groups pushing voter fraud conspiracies to the county's election board. The county charter states that commissioners shall appoint two Republicans and two Democrats nominated by their respective county party chairperson for a 2-year term. When commissioners rejected the nomination by Fulton County's Republican Party chair, the Superior Court Judge, David Emerson, issued an order requiring the board to appoint them. In a civil contempt case that threatened jail time, Emerson found the Democratic commissioners have been stubbornly litigious and acted in bad faith in his conduct prior to this litigation by his failure to comply with clear local legislation, which forced the plaintiff to file this action. Emerson rulings Wednesday states Emerson awarded attorney fees to the Republicans' plaintiff. The plaintiffs were seeking an order of both civil and criminal contempt for failing to comply with the order. Civil contempt has historically meant an ever-increasing series of daily fines until the board complies with the order. But finding of criminal contempt would have meant jail time until enough Democratic commissioners agree to vote for the appointment.
That would have been cute. Then you hear the Democratic Party holler about respect for law. They forget the order part of it. They just don't want to comply. See, the American system is based on establishing consensus. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press, freedom of the speech, and when people get that, they can debate issues fully with great information sources to back them up and let the people decide what they're going to do and reach a consensus. But the Democratic Party wants to take the fascist position and say, we don't trust our position of being able to survive full scrutiny and discussion and discourse, so we want to limit what gets said. So these people, which is the prerogative of the Republican Party to say, hey, in line with the third most popular topic concerning elections in American history, election fraud, which is the third most popular subject. We have people that, in their analysis, suggest that the election was not right. And also, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the Democrats say we don't want that heard because we are fearful that if somebody got the full facts and the full presentation in the light of day, they wouldn't go for our side. So let's break the rules and restrict it. And that comes back after setting a very negative precedent. That'll haunt them.
$10,000 a day, that's taxpayers paying.
Of course, it's Donald Trump's fault, they'll say, somehow or another. That's the same situation Fani Willis is in. She's claiming that having to pay Trump's lawyer fees are a fraud upon the people. No, she's the bozo that brought the charges that never should have been brought because it was lawfare. That's why we have the Bill of Rights to protect from lawfare. So she discarded the Bill of Rights and then compounded the thing by stupidly not asserting the Fifth Amendment and incriminating herself and a lot of others and opening up all big cans of juicy, nasty-looking worms to be inspected closely.
A Georgia Democrat indicted for alleged pandemic unemployment fraud. A sitting Georgia state lawmaker is now facing federal criminal charges after prosecutors say he fraudulently collected thousands of dollars in pandemic unemployment benefits while continuing to earn income from multiple sources, including his taxpayer-funded salary. So taxpayers pay these public politicians, public officials' salaries. Georgia State Rep Dexter Sharper, a Democrat, was indicted by a federal grand jury on charges alleging he illegally obtained more than $13,000 in COVID-era unemployment assistance while operating a private business, working as a substitute teacher, and serving as an elected legislator.
That's kind of, if they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt or he pleads guilty, that's a classic dumb crook case. You've got a government job where they have the records in their own hands already. They don't have to issue subpoenas. They just check their own records and you cold cock busted.
So how dumb can you be? Or
Well,
unless
look at Fannie Willis. That was a pretty much dumb case. So what's the dumb bunny that was up in Baltimore, the U.S. attorney up there that got the prosecutor up there that got herself convicted of fraud? Same kind of thing. It's like the arrogance of somebody thinks they're above it all and they can't get caught. And that's what you have in the inner city. Well, the cities, urban areas all across America where they're blue. It's just an arrogant sense of being above it all, immune from any kind of consequence to what they do that they shouldn't be doing.
So the indictment announced U.S. Attorney Office for Northern District of Georgia makes Sharper the third Georgia Democrat in recent months to face federal charges related to abuse of pandemic relief programs, underscoring what prosecutors say was widespread exploitation of emergency aid intended for struggling Americans. So he was triple dipping, quadruple dipping. Sharper submitted 38 weekly certifications between April 2020 and May 2021 to the Georgia Department of Labor, falsely claiming he was unemployed, had no income, and was actively seeking work. Those certifications allow him to collect $13,000 in emergency unemployment benefits funded through the CARES Act.
How stupid can you get if the facts are proved to be true? But right now he's operating under a presumption of innocence. That's American law. But, we'll see. It ought to be amusing. And by the way, see, what we're beginning to find out is you're looking at the tip of an iceberg with most of it below the surface. And that includes what we're finding out in Minnesota, that not only did this Somali thing about defrauding the state on child care cost and misappropriation of funds, we find out that the total may be several $billions, out of which right now our intelligence community says between 100.5 to 280 million dollars has been funneled to our mortal enemies in Al Qaeda and ISIS and their affiliates to operate against the country and to finance these illegals that the open border has seen come across with military grade explosives in the backpack and remote detonation devices. So when instructed, they can watch the fireworks from a couple of miles away as they kill thousands of Americans, because 911 2.0 is on the way. And these Democrats are going to have that's going to be a nasty thing to explain to the public of, it's your fault. You opened the borders and let these folk in. Didn't you have sense enough to know that after 20 plus years, 3 decades of war with Al Qaeda and ISIS in the Middle East and this horrible situation you've got with Hamas in Iran and North Korea, that we were vulnerable to infiltrate? It's 911 2.0 is on the way. 3,000 some Americans lost their lives by Al Qaeda training some operatives to infiltrate the American aviation industry and get pilots training and then sacrifice themselves and play kamikaze, hijack several aircraft and fly them into the Twin Towers in the Pentagon. And but for the intervention of some heroic Americans on board the fourth one, which crashed into an empty field, we would have had a real bad situation get a lot worse. And now those 3,000 people, which by the way beat the death toll at Pearl Harbor in 1941, December 7th, and depending upon which side of the dividing line you're on, and it's going to be worse. They're going to increase their bag a lot more than 3,000, and some people are going to have to answer for what they are responsible for. They really need to understand that they put the American public in great jeopardy. See, we have a War Department that's out there to keep our enemies at a distance. For most of the rest of the world, the enemy is right across a land border that's just 100 yards wide, a militarized zone perhaps, but the United States has the Pacific Ocean on one side, the Atlantic Ocean on the other. And thanks to the Monroe Doctrine, we had a pretty secure southern border that occasionally got violated. Most recently and egregiously was by Pancho Villa in 1916, when General John J. Pershing went on an expedition down there to get him. So other than stuff like that, we've had a pretty secure border, but these idiots just opened it wide up, and for some reason, they'd rather have foreigners enjoy the benefits of our tax dollars that American citizens can't get. The hang up as to why the government closed down before was because the Democrats wanted to give illegal families of four up to $5,000 a month. And the supposed attack by the Republicans on Obamacare was actually the way they were carrying it out. Illegals getting free health care and Americans having to pay ridiculous and absurd amounts for it if they could afford to do that. The thing with Venezuela, they set the precedent back in the late 19th century. They stopped some American ships, took the crews off, and in one instance shot the captain and half the crew by firing squad. So, they said that. That was, thank you very much, that was the impetus for Congress deciding to fund a modern American Navy, which acquitted itself well during the Spanish-American War. But see, we forget about these things because it's not as much fun as sports and music and drama and all that other stuff. And it's easily exploitable and encouraged by those who want to use their control of the communications, entertainment, and news industries to propagandize America to accept a mess, which is you are defenseless, helpless. You need to be treated as a child your whole life, and big brother whoops, tranny big sister, no telling what she is, or what she was supposed to be or what she's claiming to be, being out there very much empowered to take care of you and meanwhile control you from thinking inconvenient thoughts if you decide to wise up. So, yeah.